I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, a plea to pick up the pace on reopening.
It pains me to think that we still have sectors that are not allowed to be open.
Brampton's mayor calls on the Ford government and the medical officer of health to move Ontario to step 3. Plus,
then from there on, the rumor is cooking. Nobody knows really what's happening. There are videos circulating everywhere.
Global outrage over the assassination of Haiti's president. The Caribbean nation is now under a state of emergency. And serving a return to glory for Canadian tennis, Denis Shapovalov advances to Wimbledon's semifinals. Ontario's COVID-19 situation is improving day by day, but today a new sign that things are getting much better. For the first time since last October, no new deaths were reported in our province. And as Lorenda Redekop tells us, smaller case loads have people asking why restrictions aren't being loosened even sooner.
I really want to get our economy going. I want to get Brampton going again.
It used to be Ontario's COVID hotspot. Now cases are way down, and there's just one COVID patient in Brampton Civic Hospital's ICU. Mayor Patrick Brown wants to move to step 3 of reopening sooner. He feels it could happen more than a week ahead of the current plan.
It pains me to know that in the middle of a heat wave, we've got indoor recreation facilities that our kids can't use. We've got indoor pools that kids can't use. I want to get kids' sports back on. I want to see our indoor dining opened up.
But the medical officer of health for Peel isn't as optimistic. He says vaccination rates are rising, but just 43% of adults in the region have both doses. And the whole province needs more people protected first.
So every day that we advance reopening, we're essentially leaving 250,000 doses of coverage on the table.
The Mayor of Toronto says area mayors had agreed to another message earlier this week, not the one Patrick Brown called for today.
I, as the Mayor of Toronto, together I think with all the other mayors and chairs, would like to see as many things open as soon as possible. But we want to see it done safely and cautiously, and that's what we all agreed that we would, maintain that position.
1 week into step 2, Toronto's medical officer of health also prefers to hold off.
With each step, it does take some time before you actually have the opportunity to see what the increased movement of people does by way of increasing transmission. Hence another reason to be cautious in the approach.
And while some staff and customers are eager to eat inside at restaurants or work out inside at a gym again, the health minister said given the Delta variant, it's too risky.
We want to make sure that when we open, we can stay open. We want to avoid a fourth wave. We don't want to have to move back a step.
All GTHA mayors are pushing the province for more details on what step 3 will look like. They say businesses like theaters and concert venues need time to prepare for reopening. As of now, Ontario won't open step 3 until July 21st at the earliest. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
If no new deaths today wasn't enough, new vaccine data out today makes it clear the vaccines are working. In Ontario, almost 9.9 million people have been partially or fully vaccinated. Of those who were partially vaccinated, either with 1 dose or within 14 days of their second dose, just 0.16% of them got infected. And for those who were fully vaccinated, the number drops to just 0.02%. In Toronto, more than 50% of adults have been fully vaccinated. In order to keep the momentum going, the city will open one site to walk-in appointments.
As we experience a high number of available appointments, we've made the decision to allow for walk-in appointments at the city's Toronto Congress Centre vaccination clinic only. Starting tomorrow, the Toronto Congress Centre will have around 2,500 appointments available per day for walk-in. And these appointments will be available between 12 and 7 p.m.
The city also launched a new vaccine call center today through its VaxTO campaign. Staff will be calling residents in areas that have low vaccination rates to help them book appointments. The team aims to connect with more than 4,000 people each week. More than 6,000 people have already been connected to appointments because of these phone calls. Long-term care residents can now have up to 10 visitors outside. The province loosened restrictions on long-term care homes today. The changes come just over a week into the province moving into step 2 of reopening. Residents can also have 2 visitors inside as well as 2 essential caregivers. On to step 3 of reopening, residents will be allowed off the site for excursions and singing and dancing can resume. As Toronto's COVID-19 situation improves, the city is now working with businesses to help them prepare to welcome workers back to office spaces.
It's about getting Toronto, and especially its business community, ready to welcome back workers and customers and visitors.
The city has teamed up with the Region Board of Trade to launch its We're Ready Toronto campaign. It will allow businesses to access reopening playbooks and limit crowding through staggered work hours. Some businesses will also be given virus test kits. Quite the change in the weather, Colette.
Yes, that's right, Dwight. We refer to it as weather whiplash when we see things change like this. It's 19 degrees, and just over 24 hours ago, 5 p.m. yesterday, it was 32 degrees. So significant changes there. We have what's kind of a warm front. I say that because look at how warm the temperatures are back into southwestern Ontario, and then the contrast, Barrie, just 12 degrees. But it's sort of stalled here, so it's somewhat stationary at the moment. Windsor's even come down a little bit in terms of that temperature with some of the storms that have been rolling through there. And you can see, look at all these lightning strikes here. Yeah, some heavy downpours, even the risk of some Toonie-sized hail in here, and also some strong wind gusts. So I put the watches that are in yellow, but the area in red, that's a severe thunderstorm warning, and then seeing some wind warnings too. As this system kind of works its way through, it's mostly just some scattered showers and fog this evening and overnight for the GTA. But what will happen is we get into more steady rain, at times some heavy rain into tomorrow from the morning hours through to about midday, and then we'll see it kind of easing off as we get into the later afternoon hours. Friday morning, a few showers even possible then, but then it really is going to improve. So I'll talk about that coming up. Tonight, 15 degrees, some areas with some reduced visibility, and that tomorrow we're headed to 19 and a wet day ahead. Dwight.
Weather is brought to you by Train. To cool and clean the air in your home, it's hard to stop a train. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
There are concerns of chaos in Haiti, for its president was assassinated early this morning. It happened early this morning, as I just said. Jovenel Moïse was shot to death by a group of unknown attackers. The First Lady was also injured and remains hospitalized. Farah Morelli now with the details.
The moments after the assassination captured on video, showing the scene outside the home of President Jovenel Moïse. In the daylight hours, the brutal aftermath visible. Bullet casings strewn outside the president's official residence, where a group of unidentified attackers entered and shot Moïse dead. His wife also wounded in the attack. Today, the country's interim prime minister announced he's putting the country under a state of siege and urged calm.
I'm calling on the people to stay vigilant and stay calm in this difficult moment.
The assassination follows months of unrest in Haiti. Moïse has been in office since 2017, and there have been calls for him to step down following allegations of corruption. But he claimed his term would continue until next year. There's also been a surge in violence between rival gangs that's displaced tens of thousands of civilians. Today calls for accountability, along with the shock and condemnation from world leaders.
What's your reaction, Mr. President, to the Haitian president being assassinated?
We need a lot more information, but it's very worrisome about the state of Haiti.
In a statement, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned the assassination, adding, Canada stands ready to support the people of Haiti and offer any assistance they need.
I think it's really time for us Haitians to put ourselves together, to put our heads together, and to think about a better future for the country. What is happening is very sad. We're talking about the assassination of a president.
There are now fears of further unrest in Haiti and uncertainty over who will take power. The interim prime minister says the country's security is now under the control of the National Police and Armed Forces. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Washington.
More video surveillance cameras will be popping up across the province as Ontario looks to expand CCTV coverage. The government is investing $2 million for the project. Police and municipalities will be able to buy more surveillance camera equipment this year and next. The province says they will be installed in areas with high rates of criminal activity, including gun and gang violence. For only the third time ever, a Canadian has advanced to the semifinals at Wimbledon. 22-year-old Denis Shapovalov will play in the semis for the first time in his career on Friday. As Greg Ross explains, he has his work cut out for him.
Richmond Hill's Denis Shapovalov is going where he's never gone before. The semifinals at a Grand Slam after beating his Russian opponent Karen Khachanov today in 5 sets.
Just super happy. I think it was a really tough battle out there. So it's it took a lot out of me, but super proud of myself.
And there was plenty of pride today at the Richmond Hill Country Club, where Shapovalov got his start in tennis. A younger generation of Canadian tennis players were feeling inspired.
I watched his videos when he was training here on these courts. I want to be as good as him, so it would be a dream.
It's just nice to see that they've came from places like where I am right now.
He will face the #1 seed.
Shapovalov will now face the top-ranked player in the world in Novak Djokovic, a 19-time Grand Slam winner, including 5 Wimbledon titles. But for some reason, the 22-year-old Canadian doesn't seem phased.
We've played, a couple times. Obviously, he's gotten the better of me, but the last couple times that we've played, it's been really tight. And I'm feeling really good. When you walk out on that match, the score is 0-0, and it's a tennis match. Anything can happen, so I'm going to fight for every point.
Those who know Shapovalov well aren't surprised by his confidence.
He's won 5 in a row. He's had some tough matches. He's had some easy matches. He's primed to give it all he has on Friday.
Michael Downey is the CEO of Tennis Canada. There were actually 2 players from the Canadian program on the court today. Felix Auger-Aliassime lost in the other quarterfinals. Downey says this success bodes well for the future.
To think there's only 8 men that make the quarterfinals in the world at Wimbledon, and it is by far like the grandiose tennis tournament that they all strive for. 2 lads are 22 and 20 years of age, so they're actually not even close to peaking, is a pretty amazing situation.
On Friday, Shapovalov will look to become only the 4th Canadian to advance to a Grand Slam final. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
They look like they're having fun. Cheers from fans in Toronto as England beats out Denmark in the semifinals of the Euro Cup. It was a tense game with both teams scoring back-to-back goals in the first half, but England managed to come out on top with a goal off of a penalty kick in extra time. That means England will face off against Italy in the finals. That game Sunday at 3 p.m. It's going to be a good one.
The sport is exploding, and we really wanted to pay attention. So a month ago, this wasn't a full-time team. Now we're an actual full-time team.
Coming up, tired of yelling at your TV while watching sports? Well, there's an app for that. The CBC's Alishius on. Talk to a group of friends that developed a new way for the MMA fans to interact live. That's coming up a little later in the show. A big investment is coming to Toronto's tourism sector as it tries to recover from COVID-19.
I'm going to continue to work with the tourism industry to ensure that when this pandemic is over, Ontario will be in the best position to welcome the world back to the world in one province.
The province is investing $16.3 million in Destination Toronto and the Metro Toronto Convention Centre to help sustain operations and keep people employed. McLeod says difficult times posed by the pandemic has forced those agencies into needing help when they normally don't need it. The tourism minister calls the investment strategic. Good news for art fans. The Art Gallery of Ontario is officially welcoming visitors on July 21st under the province's Step 3 reopening plan. Preparations have been underway for weeks, and to celebrate the happy moment, the gallery is planning a must-see exhibit for the opening. The Andy Warhol exhibition will feature more than 4 decades of artwork, including 250 pieces Timed entry tickets are on sale now through the gallery's website. Residents in the Stanley Green neighborhood near Downsview Park say speeding is a big problem on their roads, and they're urging the city to implement better safety measures. This comes after a car flipped over on a quiet residential street last week. As Dahlia Ashley reports, the city says it's working to improve road safety in the community, but it is a complicated process.
It's a quiet neighborhood by Downsview Park Boulevard in North York. The maximum speed limit is 40 kilometers an hour.
There is quite a number of speeders.
About a week ago, this vehicle flipped over. Police believe the driver lost control on a turn and hit a lamp pole, knocking it to the ground. The driver was treated in hospital and charged with careless driving. Fortunately, no one else was hurt. Jenya Ferris has been living in the area for a year.
It's very unsettling, the fact that such a thing can occur here.
She says the incident could have been avoided.
It's not okay that there isn't a basic stop sign in this intersection to have that vehicle pause before making the turn.
Brian Patterson is with the Ontario Safety League. He says people are driving at speeds of up to 150 kilometers an hour in the neighborhood.
One of the things we learned with COVID is congestion kept speeds down in a lot of areas that are now less congested or almost virtually wide open, and people are choosing to take advantage of it and placing the entire community at risk.
She says the community has petitioned the city to do more to make the roads safer. Community members took a walk through the community with their city councillor last fall to assess road safety.
We walked through that intersection, which has an entrance into the park, and we asked for stop signs and a crosswalk for pedestrians. We were told that it's a great point. Nothing has happened since.
These roads are under federal jurisdictions, and the city councillor for the area, James Pasternak, agrees that road safety is a concern and says the municipality is working on ways to assume the roads so safety measures can be implemented.
Municipalities can put in their own stop signs and crosswalks, and we follow the rules under the Highway Traffic Act. But the problem is the street is federal. So we need special permissions to get that done. Not only to implement it now, but we got to make sure it stays in place when the street is transferred to the city. So these are legal issues that we're working through.
He hopes to see the roads transferred to the city as early as next year. Dahlia Ashery, CBC News, Toronto.
A house fire in Brampton caused the evacuation of several homes on the block. The home in the Kennedy Road North and Rutherford Road area was fully engulfed. No injuries were reported. Some residents who were forced out were able to return to their homes, but part of the area remains blocked off. No cause of the fire has been identified yet. 100 out-of-province firefighters have arrived in BC's interior to help battle wildfires that have devastated the small community of Lytton. More than 200 wildfires are burning in the province, with the worst of them centered around Kamloops. The Canadian military is providing support with air transport. The fire that destroyed the village of Lytton is still burning, and officials are still adding up the damage. Ongoing speculation that the fire may have been sparked by a passing train has led to calls to suspend rail traffic through the area. CN Rail adamantly denies any of its trains were in the area at the time of the fire. Leaders in the Assembly of First Nations are selecting a new national chief. Perry Bellegarde is stepping down after 6 years as head of the organization. The first round of the balloting has wrapped up. A new national chief is expected to be named later this evening. Olivia Stefanovic has more.
Perry Bellegarde, 291.
The last time a national chief was elected, it was done in a room before hundreds of people. Now it's a virtual event, with chiefs voting electronically for Perry Bellegarde's replacement during a time of reckoning on reconciliation.
We must seize this moment and take a quantum leap of change.
Candidates are under pressure from communities to seek accountability following the discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at former residential school sites.
Thoughts and prayers are no longer enough. This requires urgent and thoughtful action.
We have to be prepared as a country and as people that there will be more.
Bellegarde says he wants his successor to maintain momentum, pushing the federal government for change.
Continue to advocate for investments to close the socioeconomic gap that exists. So investments in education, in housing, and water, and infrastructure the social determinants of health, moving beyond the Indian Act and reconstituting and refocusing ourselves as First Nations and self-determination.
The new leader will step into negotiations with Ottawa over how to make First Nations policing an essential service, addressing racism in the healthcare system, and will face a decision on whether to visit the Pope at the Vatican later this year to appeal for an official apology for the Roman Catholic Church's role in running residential schools.
We, as people, have to do the climbing from all sectors of society. And I think that's a challenge for us now going forward, to make sure that everybody has hope and inspiration for a bright future here in this great land called Canada.
Whoever becomes the next national chief will also have to develop a working relationship with all political parties, as speculation grows over an upcoming snap federal election. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Ontario is investing $32.7 million in funding for targeted addictions services and supports.
Today's announcement will make it easier for people to find and access support where and when they need it, helping to save lives.
The funding will go toward harm reduction supports and improving access to evidence-based treatment. This comes as a University of Waterloo study found that opioid-related deaths have increased 592% over a 17-year period. And while mental health and addiction groups are welcoming the extra money, they say the pandemic has exacerbated the crisis and more help is needed.
It has taken a turn that has surprised even those of us in the mental health and addictions business. There has been a 60% increase in the number of opioid-related deaths in the course of the time of the pandemic, and that is incredibly concerning.
Kenville is calling for a safer drug supply and increase in the number of consumption and treatment services in the province. There were more than 2,400 overdose-related deaths in Ontario last year. Public health experts say vaccinations are crucial to containing the spread of the Delta variant. Our CBC News vaccine tracker shows almost 43% of those eligible in Canada are fully vaccinated. Data is still coming in about how effective vaccines are in the long term, but as Vicodopia tells us, there is new talk that 2 shots may not be enough for everyone.
Canada is getting COVID-19 under control. New cases have fallen dramatically as most Canadians have now been vaccinated with at least 1 dose.
In the light of the fact that we're probably going to get in Canada more and more of this Delta variant, I think it's reasonable to start thinking that we're going to need also a booster or a 3rd dose.
So do health officials in the UK, where they're starting in September with the most vulnerable, seniors and immunocompromised people. Still, one vaccine maker says it's too soon to know if everyone will need a 3rd shot.
It is a question of not just how long does the durability of the vaccine offer protection, but we look for things like breakthrough infections and when does the vaccine start to fail, and when it failed, what happened.
Indeed, fully vaccinated people are still getting infected, at least 2,700 of them, according to the latest national figures for most of Canada, and 66 died. That's less than 1% of the fully vaccinated population.
I'm feeling quite fragile.
Janet Lang has a rare form of cancer and worries she could be in that less than 1% if policymakers wait too long for real-world data on the need for boosters.
Let's give it a shot and then come up with a possible timetable, come up with some safety measures.
But rushing ahead with a 3rd round of shots here has global consequences.
If you give those 3rd doses here, it means that you're not giving there elsewhere, worldwide. And at this point in time, what is absolutely needed is for the entire planet to be vaccinated.
Even though there is no plan yet for booster shots in Canada, the federal government says it's already secured vaccines for the next 3 years. Vicodopia, CBC News, Toronto.
Work has started to take down the field hospital outside Sunnybrook.
I think this experience has really helped us understand what a temporary shelter system could do for healthcare.
The outdoor mobile health unit took in patients and created space in hospitals around the province during the peak of the pandemic. Now it's being decommissioned as vaccination numbers go up and case counts go down. Crews started clearing medical supplies and equipment from the unit. Once all supplies are out, the tent structure will come down. The parking lot is expected to be back in use in early September. The field hospital treated a total of 32 patients. Essential workers who helped New York City fight the pandemic were honored today with a ticker tape parade, the first in nearly 2 years. The CBC's Chris Reyes has this report from the parade route.
We are in the heart of the parade route for the hometown of heroes, New York City, celebrating their everyday workers who got them through this pandemic. I'm talking hospital workers, nurses, doctors, restaurant workers, teachers, police officers, firefighters, people who drove buses, worked in subways, and the big cheer today is simply thank you. How do you feel listening to everybody cheering?
It's amazing. We love it.
It's surreal. You can't believe I'm here. And take a look at the crowd. A lot of them smiling. You know how we can tell they're smiling? Because they're not wearing masks. Many of the COVID-19 restrictions were lifted in the state early in June, and they're hoping that this parade will mark the end of the pandemic and the beginning of New York City's big comeback. You can see the confetti on the ground. This is the city of parades. At the very top of the parade, Mayor Bill de Blasio. I'm going to leave you with the sights and sounds of the parade. New York City celebrating their everyday heroes. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
And they deserve all the adulation. Now, the search for victims at the site of a collapsed condo in Surfside, Florida is now in its 14th day. And families of those still missing, including 3 Canadians, have been told the operation is now a recovery mission. The mayor of Miami-Dade County shared the emotional toll the tragedy is taking on her community.
Every single victim uncovered is somebody's child, somebody's mother, somebody's teacher, somebody's colleague, a classmate, a best friend. Our hearts break for those who are mourning and for those who are waiting.
54 people are now confirmed dead, including 1 Canadian. 3 Canadians are among the more than 90 people still unaccounted for. So far, crews have removed about 112 metric tons of debris from the site, and they are now on high alert as Tropical Storm Elsa made landfall today and is moving across the state. Elsa blew ashore Florida's northern Gulf Coast with sustained winds of about 105 kilometers per hour. The storm was downgraded this morning from hurricane status, but it continues to bring heavy rains and strong winds. Power was knocked out for more than 20,000 customers, and residents are being cautioned because of a dangerous storm surge is expected. Elsa is set to head across the state of Florida, then track north into Georgia and the Carolinas. Any remnants heading our way, call it.
Yeah, I will show you actually what the track is looking like, and we're going to dodge the effects of this one. I can kind of explain too why that's happening, but let's take you in for a closer look at where Tropical Storm Elsa is right now, and look at these bands of heavy, heavy rain pushing towards Brunswick, Georgia, moving away, but still affecting Jacksonville. So as it continues to track northward, yes, this high storm surge they're talking about from these winds, of course, along the coastline, but it is not only that. All these areas you see in this kind of brighter orangey red, tropical storm warnings that are in place. But in here, I don't know if you can catch that, we're also talking about tornado warnings that are in place, common when we have one of these storms moving ashore, flood warnings plus flash flood warnings as well. So the wind speeds are still at 75 kilometers an hour, still tropical storm status, even though it's interacting with the landmass. It's actually going to keep this if we look at the track for a while, because you see into the early morning hours, and by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon, that's when it will dip. Once it goes below 63 kilometers an hour, it becomes a tropical depression. But it is going to move up and come out towards the eastern seaboard, and then by about late afternoon, early evening Friday, it will be kicking away from even Vermont and through Maine. A slim little impact on Nova Scotia, well, that's possible too. Well, depends on the track there. But we've got this nearly stationary front over us, and this kind of system that's going to be meandering through and giving us rain over the next, well, today, but into tomorrow, that's kind of holding it at bay from having an impact on us, but it's also being held up because of what's happening in the atmosphere with Tropical Storm Elsa. So we'll finally see things all moving out here as we get towards the latter part of Friday. Current temperature is 19 degrees. We had a high of 25, but that's because it came in the early morning hours and then the temperature falling into the afternoon. Our Humidex 23, different story for Windsor, where they're into that pocket of still hot, humid air, and that is meaning that we're getting the conditions for, again tonight, some thunderstorms. Some of these look that just passed through Chatham-Kent area, very, very heavy downpours. They've seen over 50 millimeters. A few areas there locally could get close to 100. So that's why the warning's in place there. We will have some showers, few embedded thunderstorms possible tonight, but really into tomorrow morning. That's when we're going to find this becoming more organized, widespread, and at times, yes, we are going to have some heavy downpours through morning into about midday tomorrow, and then getting into more like scattered showers. By Friday, late in the day, we should start to see some sun coming back out at us. But tomorrow, just 19, 23 Friday, looking pretty good into the weekend, though, Dwight. We'll recover.
It really is. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
She was originally told she couldn't box for Canada at the Olympics due to a pregnancy, but today it was made official. Kitchener's Mandy Bourgeot will be going to Tokyo. Bourgeot was pregnant and postpartum with her daughter during the period the International Olympic Committee used to determine the qualification process. Before her pregnancy, the 11-time national champion was ranked second in the world. Bourgeot appealed the IOC, and last week, in a historic decision, an arbitrator ruled the IOC must accommodate women who were pregnant during the qualification period. The 33-year-old won gold for Canada at the 2015 Pan Am Games here in Toronto and finished fifth at the 2016 Olympics in Rio. Mixed martial arts is different in a lot of ways from other sports, but especially when it comes to scoring. Basketball, baseball, hockey, it's all scored by points, while MMA is subjective in that the winner is decided by judges. And if you watch UFC, you've probably disagreed with how a round or two has been scored. Our Alicia San has the story of 3 Toronto guys who thought there should be an app for that.
The judges score the contest 48-47, Hendricks.
If you're a fight fan, chances are you've watched a bout, heard the scorecards, and thought, what?
Like, we're all GSP fans, right? Like, we're Canadian.
Take the example of the George St. Pierre Johnny Hendricks main event in 2013.
And it was a controversial decision. No, like, we all thought Johnny Hendricks won the fight.
Fans and fight pundits would go on to argue how they would have scored it.
And then it just popped into my head, like, well, there could be an actual app for this.
With Verdict MMA, you can do more than just yell at your TV. It was developed by 3 longtime pals from Toronto.
We all got together during fight nights at your place.
Yeah.
Like, whenever there was like something crazy that happened, like the room would explode. It'd be like, a dozen of us at least every single weekend.
If you're like us,
You're a real fan.
you love to talk about MMA. And during the pandemic, it's not like you could have the gang over for a fight or watch it at the pub. So over the last year, thousands flocked to Verdict to make their picks.
At the top here, you can see Poirier and McGregor coming up this Saturday. I can put in my pick, and so I can say, I think Conor McGregor is going to get him in first-round knockout again. When the fights are live, we actually send out a push notification right when the event's live and right at the end of the round. And at that moment, you can say, is it a 10-9, a 10-10, however you want to score it. And afterwards, you can read the global scorecard and you can see what the entire world thinks.
Verdict is recognized by the Professional Fighting League, making fan input part of the conversation.
Just to see Verdict pop up on the screen, our logo, and the commentators mentioning it, that was crazy. That was a dream.
It's also a reference point for the fighters themselves. After former featherweight champ Jose Aldo lost a decision a while back, he posted on Instagram to argue, well, according to these folks on Verdict, I won.
I couldn't believe it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
While we're name dropping, Olympic wrestler, now retired MMA fighter Ben Askren is an investor.
Right? You look at like basketball, football, hockey, these are all seasonal sports. So you can make an entire platform dedicated to those sports, because what are you going to do in the off season? With MMA, we have events running almost every weekend. We're in a unique position where we could do this, right?
These 3 Toronto fight fans really are doing this.
There's just so many people having fun with this, and yeah, this is just the beginning.
Who do you have this weekend?
Oh, Conor for sure. I will never bet against Conor. I can't.
The verdict is still out on that one until Saturday. Alicia San, CBC News, Toronto.
As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed down by 9 points. The Dow went up by 104 points. The dollar traded lower at 80.16 cents US. Stay with us. We are coming right back. What is special about Tibetan culture, and what's all the hype about momos? In honor of the first Tibetan Heritage Month here in Ontario, we asked some people from that community to tell us what it means to be Tibetan.
I'm talking to you on the camera. This camera, and do I sometimes change there? Feel like, and that's why.
Hello, Tishtile. My name is Bema Mente.
Tishtile, my name is Tenzin Chuki.
Hi, my name is Tashi Nangsitsang.
Tishtile, nghe mình là ý sĩ tế dân sự yul.
Tishtile, nghe mình diki chodun jamyaling re.
Tishtile, I'm Chimi Lamo.
Tishtile, nghe mình là Tinzu Omoyi.
Tishtile, my name is Lamoto.
Tishtile, my name is Urgen Badisang.
Nga, gishilaramba gundutunduyi.
First thing that comes to my mind is that we visited Tibet. Oftentimes people are like, what does Tibet look like? I've heard it's beautiful. It's the rooftop of the world, the third pole. And oftentimes someone like me doesn't have an answer.
That we're super spiritual or super peaceful. All we want to do is, express our compassion.
Kondo saya yorwesna, kondo saya yorwesna, kondo saya yorwe. Tonyung osun to sana ya, kondo saya yona. Phobi chidangi phobale ya kondo saya yogarwa. Ina ya semba samushida yore.
Everybody in Tibet is either a monk or a nun. And everybody in Tibet is a vegetarian. Tibetans love their meat.
How's the Dalai Lama? I don't know. I mean, I check the news just like everyone else. So if you found out about him, I'm probably the same. I don't call him on every Tuesday.
Oh, people ask first, how do you pronounce Tibet? Because I'll say I'm from Tibet, and they'll say, are you from Quebec?
We try to avoid killing insects. So sometimes people will be like, oh, why don't you just step on it? But it's actually a really big deal to us because we really treasure any life, no matter big or small.
Whether or not our monks can levitate and do Shaolin, which is exactly the question that my Uber driver asked me today.
This is a funny one, but my favorite Tibetan expression is definitely "ainske," or "ains," right? It's like a sort of it boosts people's confidence, or it's like a slight boost.
Favorite Tibetan expression would be "pe motona nemake." Simply translated as, if you can't be part of the solution, then at least don't be part of the problem.
My favorite Tibetan expression is "ale," or they'll say, "Oh, dindijere," which means, "Oh, is that how it is?" Or "ale" means, "Oh, is that the case?"
My favorite Tibetan food is something called tentuk. It's a hot noodle dish with hand-pulled noodles. And I think I'm a true Tibetan Himalayan girl that just likes a hearty, hot soup.
My favorite Tibetan food is tsamba, which is milled Tibetan barley. And I eat it for breakfast, but you can have it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, so that's why I like it.
The classic Tibetan momos.
Momos.
Momos? Momos. Momos is a staple food of Tibet. I love the variety of it. You can put anything you can put inside as the fillings.
Different homes have different tastes and textures.
The amount of work you put behind eating momos, with the family, it's very social, it's delicious.
If
you meet a Tibetan, they'll invariably or very often say their name is Tenzin. So they're named after His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Oftentimes, Tibetans will go by their middle name. So instead of saying Denzi Pema, they'll say Pema. Or they'll give them a nickname, because Tibetans are quite notorious for nicknames as well.
Most of them are named Tenzin, right? I'm not a Tenzin, so maybe that can be a hashtag, not a Tenzin, because we're a growing movement.
Tibetans by nature, I find, are very hospitable. and very kind and compassionate. I think that has a lot to do with our religion and our upbringing and our culture.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a precious gem, referred to as noble.
They're a collective idea.
A lot of Tibetans are only maybe one generation removed from having been refugees, of having survived some of the biggest atrocities in the Himalayas.
The way that we can rally around each other and support each other. We've been living in exile for over 65 years now. We've built a great community center, the sense of oneness, togetherness.
There's a lot of inclusive nationalities, but Tibetans would be marked as one that's especially warm and inviting to strangers.
A Mississauga man is proving age is just a number. He started a biking group for cyclists over the age of 80 back in December. Now he has 500 members across 21 countries, and it's only growing. Take a look at how he got started.
And I enjoy the freedom and the joy of just getting out there and feeling the breeze on my face. I didn't know anybody else that was in the 80s that were cycling together. I was kind of wondering how many octogenarians were still cycling, which led me to want to maybe set up a Facebook site and see where it all came from. So 18 months ago, I just thought I'd just set up a Facebook site. What would I call it? Well, I'm a kind of fun guy. I like to have whimsical type of expressions. So I thought maybe out of nowhere came the words, the Royal Academy of Octogenarian Cyclists. So I posted it on Facebook, and within 24 hours, I got my first one. Before I knew, within a week, I had 10. After 18 months, we're up to 551 worldwide octogenarian and nonagenarian cyclists. I never expected that there would be that many people in their 80s and 90s who are still avid cyclists. My love of cycling started when I was a young fellow of 9 years old when we moved from Windsor to Tecumseh, Ontario, and I was a good mile away from school, so I cycled to school every day. There were no school buses back in the 40s, and I cycled right through my life. I've never stopped cycling. The lake is gorgeous this morning. This group was started 2 months before the pandemic really kicked in, and it became an opportunity for the people around the world to communicate and share concern. It really warms my heart to think that this group has now been, at this time with the pandemic, such a powerful source of individuals reaching out to one another and showing a concern for one another. Age is not a deterrent to cycling. You can cycle as long as you can get on your bike and ride.
And I love that, Colin. And I'm one of those people who started cycling, my wife and I, during COVID.
Yeah.
You know, we got bikes and hit the trails, and you look at the city in a completely different way from a bike.
I think so, and you can really hear that joy in his voice, right? Like he's truly enthusiastic about it.
A few years, I'm going to join his club. I got a few years.
You got a few years to go, come on. Let's go ahead and show you what's going on here with some of the thunderstorms, stronger storms that we're seeing in southwestern Ontario. The lightning strikes, all these blue strikes here, that's one thing, but also risk of hail here up to Toonie size, in fact, but some very, very heavy downpours. So I was mentioning earlier around Chatham, Kent, it looked like about 50 millimeters already and may double that in some areas, highly localized. But with these storms coming through, not only that, there's your severe thunderstorm watch. So you can see it's now extended closer to the Niagara region and edging a little closer to the Golden Horseshoe as well. So we are seeing these, they are tracking eastward. And that's what we're going to be getting into this evening and overnight. Rain with some thunderstorm activity, more organized, as I was saying, towards tomorrow morning for the GTA anyway, and kind of lingering towards about midday, and then it tapers off somewhat. So Yeah, 15 degrees tonight with that activity. Look for some fog patches developing too. Again, I always like to mention that when we have anyone, our essential workers, anyone that's got to be on the roads through the overnight hours, there's going to be some reduced visibility in spots. And then for tomorrow afternoon, we are going to come out of it, like I said, but there's still going to be some instability around. So the high just 19 degrees, 32 yesterday. Remember that? So there we go into Friday. In the early morning hours on Friday, a few isolated showers still possible, but then we'll start to break out of this and it looks better. Afternoon, I still see showers kind of west of the city, but otherwise we'll get some sunny breaks coming in. That'll help us with the temperature and we'll get it up there a little further into the 20s, 23, and then into the weekend. There are going to be some showers perhaps late Sunday into Monday coming back, but I'll tell you, much of the weekend's looking good, Dwight.
You know how much we love not having to water the grass. So
yes, I know you do.
We'll get out on the bikes during the breaks. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Stay safe and have a great night, everybody.